The old farmhouse smelled like roasted meat and herbs when Jonas Thorne pushed open the warped wooden door, and the sight that greeted him made his exhausted brain stumble over itself trying to process what he was seeing. 3 enormous women stood in his kitchen, each easily 7 feet tall with broad shoulders and muscular frames that would make any soldier jealous. Their skin was a deep forest green, and small tusks curved upward from their lower jaws. They wore simple but well-made clothing, aprons tied around their waists, and they were cooking. Actually cooking with practiced ease, moving around each other in the cramped space like they had done this 1,000 times before. Jonas dropped his travel pack. It hit the floor with a thud that echoed through the empty entry hall. All 3 women froze. The tallest one, who had been stirring something in a large iron pot, slowly turned to face him. Her dark eyes widened, and her hand tightened on the wooden spoon until her knuckles turned pale green. "You are early," she said, her voice deep and melodious with an accent that rolled the R sounds. The land agent said 3 more days. Jonas opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "This is my farm, I bought it. Sight unseen, yes, but I have the deed." The second orc woman, slightly shorter with her black hair tied back in a thick braid, stepped forward protectively. "We have lived here for 2 years. Since the old farmer died, we have tended the fields and kept the house from falling apart." "Nobody told me," Jonas said, which was the absolute truth. The land agent in the capital had shown him papers, taken his money, and sent him on his way with directions and a rusty key that apparently was not even necessary since the door had been unlocked. Nobody said anything about anyone living here. The third orc woman, younger than the other 2 with lighter green skin and nervous energy radiating from her, moved to stand beside her companions. "Are you going to kill us?" "What? No." Jonas held up his hands. "I am not going to kill anyone. I just spent the last of my coin on this place and traveled for 3 weeks to get here. I am tired, confused, and apparently the victim of either a terrible mistake or a con, but I am not a murderer." The tallest woman studied him with an intensity that made Jonas feel like she was reading his soul. After a long moment, she set down her spoon. "You are human. You do not have weapons drawn. You look like you have not eaten well in days." She paused. "Sit, eat, then we will talk about this problem." Jonas almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. He had served 6 years in the border wars, seen things that still haunted his dreams, and taken his discharge pay to buy a farm far from civilization where he could just exist in peace. He had not expected squatters. He definitely had not expected orc squatters, and he absolutely had not expected them to offer him dinner. But his stomach growled loudly enough that all 3 women heard it, and the youngest one's expression softened slightly. "All right," Jonas said slowly. "I will sit, I will eat. Then we talk." The tallest woman nodded once and gestured to a wooden table that dominated the center of the kitchen. It was sturdy, handmade, and polished from use. Jonas pulled out a chair that creaked under his weight and sat, watching as the 3 orc women moved back into their cooking routine with only occasional glances in his direction. They brought him food. A thick stew with vegetables he recognized and some he did not, fresh bread that steamed when he broke it open, and water from a clay pitcher that tasted clean and cold. Jonas ate, and he tried not to think about how this was the best meal he had eaten since leaving the capital. "My name is Dagra," the tallest woman said, settling into a chair across from him. Her voice was formal, careful. "These are my sisters, Kethri and Eula. We are outcasts from our clan. We came south 2 years ago looking for somewhere we could live without fighting. The old human who owned this place, he was dying. He let us stay in exchange for help with the harvest. He died in the winter. We stayed because we had nowhere else to go. Kethri, the one with the braid, crossed her arms. "We have kept this place alive. The fields would be overgrown. The house would have collapsed. We have worked every day." Eula, the youngest, twisted her hands together. "Please do not make us leave. There is nowhere safe for us." Jonas set down his spoon and rubbed his face with both hands. He was so damn tired. Tired of fighting, tired of moving, tired of the nightmares that woke him up screaming. He had wanted peace. He had wanted a place to disappear. "I do not want to throw anyone out," he said carefully, "but I also cannot just give up my farm. I spent everything on this place. Everything. This is supposed to be my fresh start." "And if we leave, where will we go?" Dagra asked quietly. "Human villages will not take us. Our clan will not have us back. The winter is coming in 3 months. We would die out there." Jonas looked at each of them in turn. Dagra with her strong features and proud bearing. Kethri with her defensive stance and fierce eyes. Eula with her youth and obvious fear. They were not lying. He could see it in every line of their bodies, in the way they held themselves like people who had already lost everything once and could not bear to lose again. "What if we shared it?" The words came out before Jonas fully thought them through. "The farm is big. The house is big. You have been working it already. I know farming. I grew up on one before the war. We could work together. Split the harvest. Live here together until we figure out something better." All 3 women stared at him like he had grown a second head. "You would share your land with orcs?" Kethri asked slowly. "You would live with us, eat with us, work beside us. Why would you do that?" Dagra's voice was sharp with suspicion. "What do you want from us?" Jonas met her eyes. "I want peace. I want to work land and see things grow. I want to sleep through the night without dreaming about blood. You want a place to live safely. Seems like we might be able to help each other." "Humans do not help orcs," Eula whispered. "Everyone knows that." "I am not everyone," Jonas said. "I am just a tired veteran who bought a farm and found 3 women already living in it. I could try to force you out, we could fight over it, someone could get hurt, and I would still be alone with more nightmares. Or we could try this, see if it works." Dagra was quiet for a long time. Her sisters looked to her, waiting for her decision. Jonas could see the calculation in her eyes, the weighing of risks and possibilities. "1 season," she finally said. "We work together for 1 season, through the harvest. If it does not work, we will leave in the spring when travel is safer." "If it does work." She trailed off like she could not quite let herself hope. "If it works, we keep going," Jonas finished. "We make this a real partnership." Dagra extended her hand across the table. It was twice the size of Jonas's, calloused and strong. "1 season. You try to hurt us or betray us and we will fight back." Jonas took her hand. Her grip could have crushed his bones, but she was careful, controlled. "1 season. You have my word." They shook on it, and Jonas felt something shift in the air. He had no idea if this was the best decision or the stupidest one he had ever made. But it was done now. That first night, Jonas slept in a small bedroom on the ground floor that had been the old farmer's room. The bed was lumpy and the blankets were thin, but he was so exhausted that he fell asleep almost instantly. He woke in the middle of the night to silence, and for a moment he did not know where he was. Then memory flooded back, and with it a kind of surreal disbelief. He had bought a farm. There were orc women living in it. He had agreed to share it with them. His life had taken such strange turns. Morning came with pale light filtering through dirty windows and the sound of movement from upstairs. Jonas dressed in his worn work clothes and made his way to the kitchen, where Dagra was already awake and starting a fire in the stone hearth. "You are up early," she said without turning around. Military habit. Hard to break. Jonas moved to help, but she waved him off. "I have this. You can start by walking the property. See what we have been doing. Make your own assessment. It was a test, Jonas realized. She wanted to see if he would try to take credit for their work or find fault to use against them. He nodded and grabbed an apple from a bowl on the counter before heading outside. The farm was bigger than he had expected. 60 acres according to the deed, with about half of it cleared for cultivation. The rest was wooded, with a stream running through the eastern section. Dagra and her sisters had planted crops in neat rows, and everything looked healthy despite being late in the growing season. There was a small orchard with fruit trees that were old but still producing. A chicken coop with birds scratching in the dirt. A barn that needed some repairs but was functional. It was beautiful. It was exactly what Jonas had dreamed about during long nights on campaign, when he thought he might not live to see another dawn. He spent 2 hours walking every inch of the property, taking mental notes. The western fence needed work. The barn roof had weak spots. The well was good, though the bucket was wearing out. Small things. Manageable things. When he returned to the house, all 3 women were in the kitchen eating breakfast. They looked up when he entered, wariness still evident in their postures. "You 3 have done an incredible job," Jonas said honestly. "The fields look healthy. The animals are well cared for. The property is in better shape than I had any right to expect." Kethri's shoulders relaxed slightly. "You mean that?" "I do. I saw Orc farms during the war. I know your people understand land and growing things. You have been taking care of this place." Jonas pulled out a chair and sat down. "I think we can make this work, but we need to be clear about expectations. We share the work equally. We share the harvest equally. We make decisions together. No one is in charge. We are partners." "Partners," Dagra repeated the word like she was testing its weight. "That is not how humans usually treat our kind." "That is not how soldiers treat enemies," Jonas corrected. "I am not a soldier anymore. You are not enemies. We are just people trying to survive." Eula pushed a plate of eggs toward him. "Eat. Then we will show you what needs to be done today." The work started immediately. There was always work on a farm. Jonas remembered that from his childhood. But working alongside Dagra and her sisters was different than anything he had experienced before. They were stronger than him, able to lift and carry loads that would have broken his back. But he was faster in some ways, better with detailed work that required smaller hands. They fell into a rhythm without really discussing it, each person gravitating toward tasks that suited them. Dagra directed the work with quiet authority. She knew every plant in the field, every animal's temperament, every fence post that was weak. Kethri was the practical one, always thinking 3 steps ahead, planning for problems before they arrived. Eula was the most skilled at delicate work, tending the vegetable garden with gentle care that seemed at odds with her size and strength. Jonas found himself fitting into gaps he had not even known existed. He repaired the barn roof, using carpentry skills his father had taught him decades ago. He fixed the western fence, digging new post holes and setting them deep. He worked with the chickens, collecting eggs and mending their coop where predators had tried to break in. The days passed in a blur of physical labor and exhaustion. They ate together, sharing meals at the big kitchen table. The conversations were stilted at first, careful, with long silences. But slowly, gradually, they began to talk. Kethri told him about their clan in the mountains, about the strict hierarchies and the constant preparation for war. "They wanted us to be warriors," she said one evening over dinner. "But we did not want to fight. We wanted to grow things. To build things, that made us weak in their eyes, unworthy." "So you left?" Jonas asked. "We were cast out," Dagra corrected. "There is a difference. We did not choose to leave. We were exiled for refusing to participate in a raid on a human settlement." We said it was wrong to attack people who had done nothing to us. Our clan leader said we were traitors. You gave up everything to avoid killing people, Jonas said slowly. That takes more courage than fighting. Eula looked up at him with surprise. Most humans would say we were cowards. Most humans are idiots. Jonas took a bite of bread. I have killed men in battle. I have watched friends die. There is nothing brave about it. It is just survival. Walking away from violence when everyone around you demands it, that is real strength. Dagra's expression was unreadable, but something shifted in her eyes. A crack in her defensive walls. The next day, Jonas shared his own story while they worked side by side in the fields, harvesting the last of the summer wheat. He told them about growing up on a farm, about his father dying and leaving debts that swallowed everything, about joining the military because it was the only way to survive, about 6 years on the border, fighting in skirmishes and battles that he barely understood. I killed orc warriors, he admitted, his voice quiet. During the war. It was them or me. I did what I had to do to stay alive, but I never understood why we were fighting. Every time I asked my commanders, they just said it was tradition. That orcs were the enemy, that was enough reason. Kethri snorted. Our leaders said the same about humans, that you were invaders, that we had to fight or lose our lands. And here we are, Jonas said, gesturing at the field around them. Orcs and human working the same land together, nobody dying, makes you wonder what the point of it all was. Control, Dagra said. Leaders need enemies to stay in power. If we are not fighting you, we might question them. Same for your people. Jonas thought about that as they worked, about all the men he had known who had died for reasons that seemed increasingly hollow. About the orc warriors he had killed who probably had families waiting for them to come home. About the sheer waste of it all. 2 weeks into their arrangement, a problem emerged that forced them to truly work as a team. Jonas woke before dawn to the sound of panicked chickens. He scrambled out of bed and ran outside in his nightshirt, grabbing a pitchfork from the barn on his way. In the dim pre-dawn light, he could see something large moving in the chicken coop. A bear. A massive brown bear that had torn through the fence and was methodically killing the birds. Jonas shouted, trying to scare it off, but the bear just turned and roared at him. He held his ground with the pitchfork, which felt laughably inadequate. The bear was easily twice his size and could tear him apart with one swipe of its claws. Then Dagra was there, moving past him with a thick branch in her hands. Kethri appeared on the other side, armed with an axe. Eula came out of the house carrying a lit torch. "Get behind us," Dagra ordered, and Jonas did not argue. He was a competent fighter, but he was smart enough to recognize when he was outmatched. The 3 orc women formed a line between Jonas and the bear. They shouted in their native language, harsh guttural sounds that echoed across the farm. The bear reared up on its hind legs, roaring back. Dagra stepped forward and swung her branch, catching the bear on its shoulder. The impact would have shattered a human's bones, but the bear barely flinched. It charged. Kethri dodged to the side and brought her axe down on its flank, opening a long gash. The bear wheeled around, swiping at her with its claws. She ducked under the blow. Eula threw the torch at its face, and the bear reared back, momentarily blinded. Jonas saw his opening. He ran forward with the pitchfork and drove it into the bear's hindquarters with all his strength. The bear roared in pain and rage, spinning to face this new threat. Dagra used the distraction to bring her branch down on the back of its head with a sickening crack. The bear stumbled, shook its head, then decided this meal was not worth the fight. It turned and lumbered off into the woods, leaving a trail of blood behind it. Jonas stood there, breathing hard, adrenaline making his hands shake. Dagra, Kethri, and Eula were equally winded, but they moved immediately to check the damage. Half the chickens were dead. The fence was destroyed. But they were all alive. "Thank you," Jonas said, looking at each of them. "You saved my life." "You helped," Kethri said grudgingly. "That pitchfork strike gave Dagra the opening she needed." "We are partners," Dagra said firmly. "We protect what is ours, together." Something warm unfurled in Jonas's chest, a feeling he had not experienced in years. Belonging. They spent the next day repairing the chicken coop with better defenses. Jonas showed them a technique his father had used, creating a double fence with sharp stakes between the layers. The sisters contributed their own ideas, building it taller and stronger than before. By nightfall, the coop was more fortress than fence. That night, they celebrated their victory with a special dinner. Eula made a dessert using the last of the berries they had been saving, and Dagra opened a bottle of honey wine she had been making from wild honeycomb. They drank and ate and talked, and for the first time, Jonas felt like they were not just co-workers sharing space. They were becoming something like friends. As the summer faded into autumn, the work intensified. The harvest was the most critical time of the year, and every day counted. They worked from dawn until dusk, bringing in wheat and oats and vegetables. They preserved food for the winter, filling the root cellar with potatoes and turnips and carrots. They smoked meat and dried herbs and made cheese from the goat's milk. Jonas found himself watching Dagra during these long work days. She moved with such confidence and grace despite her size. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with human standards. Strong features, intelligent eyes, a way of holding herself that spoke of both power and carefully controlled vulnerability. He caught himself staring more than once and forced his attention back to his work. This was not the time for complicated feelings. They were partners, nothing more, but his heart did not seem to understand that distinction. One evening in late autumn, Jonas was working alone in the barn, organizing the tools they would need for winter preparations. He heard footsteps and turned to find Dagra standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the setting sun. "Can I help you with something?" he asked. She stepped inside, her expression uncertain. "I wanted to talk to you. Alone." Jonas set down the hammer he had been holding. "All right." "What is on your mind? Why are you really doing this?" Dagra asked bluntly. "Sharing your farm with us, working beside orcs. You could have forced us out. You could have gone to the magistrate in the nearest town and had us removed legally. Instead you stayed. You worked. You fought a bear to protect our chickens." "Why?" Jonas took a breath. "Honest answer. I would not ask for anything else. Because I am tired of being alone. Because I spent 6 years surrounded by people and feeling completely isolated. Because when I walked into that kitchen and saw you three cooking, you looked like what I had always wanted. A home. A family. People to share the work and the rewards." He paused. "And because you deserved better than being thrown out for the crime of already being here." Dagra was quiet for a long moment. "You see us as people, not as orcs, not as monsters or enemies, just people." "You are people," Jonas said simply. "What else would you be?" She moved closer, and Jonas suddenly realized how small the barn felt with her in it. "You are different than other humans I have known. You do not flinch when we walk past. You do not watch us with fear or disgust. You share food with us. You laugh at Eula's jokes. You listen when Kethri complains about the chickens. You treat us like equals." "You are equals," Jonas said. "You are better at most of this than I am." "That is not what I mean." Dagra's voice dropped lower. "You look at me sometimes, when you think I do not notice. You look at me the way a man looks at a woman he finds attractive." Jonas felt heat rise in his face. He opened his mouth to deny it, but the words died. She deserved honesty. "I do," he admitted. I find you attractive, I find you fascinating. But I know that is complicated. I know humans and orcs do not typically mix. I would never act on it. I would never make you uncomfortable." "What if it did not make me uncomfortable?" Dagra asked softly. Jonas's breath caught. "What? What if I have been watching you too? What if I have been noticing the way you smile when Eula brings you extra food? The way you always make sure we rest when we are tired? The way you fix the chair I sit in because you noticed it wobbled?" She took another step closer. "What if I find myself thinking about you when I should be sleeping?" "Dagra," Jonas said, his voice rough. "We are partners. I do not want to ruin that. You and your sisters need this place." "I need this place. If we do something foolish and it goes wrong, everything falls apart. And if we do nothing and wonder forever what might have been." She reached out and touched his face with one large hand, her palm warm against his cheek. "I have spent my whole life being careful, being practical, following the rules. It got me exiled and nearly killed. Maybe it is time to be brave instead." Jonas leaned into her touch without thinking. "This is brave, terrifyingly brave. Then be terrified with me." Dagra leaned down and Jonas stretched up and they met in the middle. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of them learning the shape of each other. Then it deepened, becoming something fierce and desperate. Jonas wrapped his arms around her waist, and she lifted him easily, pressing him against the barn wall. They broke apart breathing hard, staring at each other with a mixture of wonder and fear. "What are we doing?" Jonas whispered. "Something probably very stupid," Dagra said, "and absolutely wonderful." They kissed again and the world narrowed to just this moment, this connection. This impossible, terrifying, perfect thing growing between them. When they finally returned to the house, flushed and disheveled, Kethri took one look at them and groaned. "Seriously, you two could not wait until after winter?" Eula bounced excitedly. "I knew it. I told you." They kept staring at each other. "You owe me 3 copper coins. You bet on us?" Jonas asked, not sure whether to be offended or amused. "It was obvious," Eula said happily. "You both got this soft look whenever you thought the other was not watching. It was adorable." Dagra's green cheeks darkened with a blush. "We are not discussing this." "Too late," Kethri said. "But for the record, if you hurt her, human, I will break you in half." "Understood," Jonas said seriously. "Same goes for if anyone hurts her. I will protect her with everything I have." Kethri studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good enough." The next few weeks were strange and wonderful. Jonas and Dagra did not change their working relationship during the day. They still shared tasks equally, still made decisions as a group. But in the evenings, after Kethri and Eula went upstairs to their rooms, Jonas and Dagra sat together by the fire. They talked about everything and nothing. They learned each other's pasts in greater detail. They shared dreams and fears and hopes. They kissed until Jonas's lips were numb and his heart felt too big for his chest. "I never thought I could have this," Dagra admitted one night, curled against Jonas's side on the old couch. She was so large that he felt like he was being engulfed, but it was the most comfortable he had ever been. "Love, partnership, choice in who I spend my life with. Our culture does not allow for this. Marriages are arranged for political or practical reasons. Love is seen as weakness." "Human culture is not much better," Jonas said, running his fingers through her hair. It was thick and coarse, but he loved the texture. "My parents had an arranged marriage too. They grew to care for each other, but it was never love. When my father died, my mother mourned the loss of her partner in running the farm, not the loss of her soulmate. Is that what we are?" Dagra asked quietly. "Soulmates." "I do not know what we are," Jonas admitted. "I just know that I wake up every morning excited to see you. I know that when something funny happens, you are the first person I want to tell. I know that the idea of you leaving makes my chest ache. If that is not love, it is close enough that I cannot tell the difference. Dagra tilted her face up and kissed him, slow and sweet. I love you, she whispered against his lips. I am terrified of it, but I love you. I love you too, Jonas said, and felt the truth of it settle into his bones. Whatever comes, we face it together. What came was winter, and with it, isolation. Snow fell in heavy blankets, cutting them off from the outside world. They had prepared well, with food stores and firewood stacked high. The four of them settled into a routine of indoor work, maintaining equipment and planning for spring planting. Jonas had never been happier. He woke up warm, with Dagra beside him in the bed they now shared. He spent his days working alongside people who had become family. He went to sleep exhausted but content, with no nightmares plaguing his rest. It was too perfect to last. The problem arrived with the first thaw in late winter. A group of humans from the nearest town appeared at the farm, 5 men on horseback with weapons at their sides. Jonas saw them coming and met them at the property line, his stomach sinking. "Can I help you?" he called out. The lead man, older with a thick beard and cold eyes, looked him up and down. "You are the new owner, Jonas Thorne." "I am. What is this about?" "We have reports of orcs living on this property. 3 of them. That true?" Jonas kept his expression neutral. "I have workers living here, yes. They help with the farm." "Orc workers," the man said flatly. "Living in a house, eating at your table. We do not tolerate that around here, Thorne. Orcs are monsters. They belong in chains or dead, not pretending to be human." Rage flared hot in Jonas's chest, but he forced it down. "They are people doing honest work. They are not hurting anyone. They are orcs. That is enough." The man leaned forward in his saddle. "You have 2 choices. Send them away, or we will come back and remove them ourselves, violently if necessary." "You will not touch them," Jonas said, his voice deadly quiet. "This is my property. They are under my protection." "Protection?" One of the other men laughed. "You are one human. We are a whole town. You cannot stop us. Try me." Jonas did not move, but his hand drifted to the knife at his belt. "I was a soldier for 6 years. I fought in battles that would turn your hair white. I have killed men for far less than threatening my family. Come back here with violence in mind, and I promise you will regret it." The bearded man's eyes narrowed. "Family? You are calling orcs your family." "I am calling the people living in my house my family," Jonas corrected. "What they are does not matter to me. It should not matter to you either. It matters to everyone. You are violating every law of decency and nature." The man spat on the ground. "We will be back, with more men. You will comply, or you will be removed along with your pets." They rode off, leaving Jonas standing in the melting snow, shaking with fury and fear. He turned to find Dagra, Kethri, and Eula standing on the porch. They had heard everything. "You should let us go," Dagra said, her voice carefully controlled. "This is your home, your fresh start. We will not let you lose it because of us." "No," Jonas said firmly. "This is our home, all of ours. I am not letting anyone drive you away." "They will come back with more men," Kethri pointed out. "We can fight, but if they bring enough people, we will lose. They might kill you, burn the farm. We have seen this before." "Then we prepare," Jonas said. "We have some time. They need to organize. Convince people to join them. We use that time to make this place defensible." Eula looked uncertain. "You would fight your own people for us." Jonas climbed the porch steps and looked at each of them in turn. "You are my people now, the ones who matter. Anyone who comes here with violence in mind is the enemy. I do not care what species they are." They spent the next 3 days preparing. Jonas taught them techniques he had learned in the military for defending a fixed position. They built barricades. They gathered weapons, including bows that Kethri turned out to be devastatingly accurate with. They created escape routes and hiding spots. They planned for every contingency Jonas could think of. On the fourth day, the mob arrived. 20 men, some on horses, all armed. They stopped at the property line, and the bearded man called out, "Last chance, Thorn, send out the orcs or we are coming in." Jonas stood on the porch with Dagra beside him and her sisters behind them. "These people are residents of this farm legally. They have done nothing wrong. You are trespassing. Leave now." "We warned you," the man shouted back. He turned to his mob. "Take them." The men charged forward. Jonas and Dagra retreated into the house, slamming and barring the door. Arrows came through the windows, and Jonas heard men trying to break down the door. It held, reinforced with the extra beams they had added. "Kethri, the roof," Dagra ordered. Her sister scrambled up the stairs to the shooting positions they had prepared. Eula moved to the back entrance, guarding it with a spear. Jonas and Dagra worked together at the windows, using long poles to push back men trying to climb through. It was chaos, violence, everything Jonas had hoped to leave behind. But he fought with a clarity he had never felt in the war. He was protecting his home, his family, the people he loved. Kethri's arrows found targets, non-lethal shots to shoulders and legs that sent men stumbling back cursing. Eula held the rear entrance against 3 men who tried to force their way in. Dagra and Jonas coordinated perfectly, each covering the other's gaps. The mob was winning through sheer numbers. They would break in eventually. Jonas knew it. But then a horn sounded from the road, clear and commanding. The fighting slowed. Stopped. Jonas risked a glance out the window and saw a new group arriving. 10 riders wearing the colors of the regional magistrate's office. At their head was a woman in official robes, her face set in lines of fury. "What is happening here?" she demanded, her voice carrying across the farm. The bearded man stammered. "We were enforcing decency laws. Removing orcs from human land. By attacking a legal landowner." The magistrate looked at the damage, the wounded men, the clear signs of an organized assault. "I received word that trouble was brewing here. I see I arrived just in time." She turned to Jonas. "You are Jonas Thorn." "I am," Jonas called from the window. "Are the orcs in your house violent criminals?" "No. They are residents who help work the farm. They have harmed no one." The magistrate nodded. "There is no law against orcs living on private property with the owner's consent. There is, however, a law against mob violence and destruction of property." She turned back to the gathered men. "You will all disperse immediately. Those of you who are injured, see a healer. Those of you who are not, count your blessings. If I hear of any further action against this farm, I will bring charges of assault and attempted murder. Am I understood?" The men grumbled but retreated. The bearded man shot Jonas a look of pure hatred before riding off. The magistrate dismounted and approached the house. Jonas opened the door cautiously. "May I come in?" she asked. "I promise I am not here to cause trouble." Jonas stepped aside. The magistrate entered, followed by 2 of her guards. She looked around the interior, taking in the damage from the attack and the defensive preparations. "You fought well," she said. "Military training, 6 years in the border wars," Jonas confirmed. "This is Dagra, Kethri, and Eula. They are the ones those men wanted to drive out." The magistrate studied the 3 orc women. "You are the ones who kept this farm running for 2 years after old Matthias died." Dagra nodded warily. "We are. I heard about you. Matthias mentioned you in his will, actually. He wanted to leave you the farm, but his children contested it on the grounds that you were not legal residents. The matter was still in court when they decided to sell to this young man instead." She turned back to Jonas. "You bought a complicated piece of property, Mr. Thorn." "I bought a home," Jonas said. "Everything else is details." The magistrate smiled slightly. Well, legally, you are in the clear. The property is yours and you can have whoever you want living here. But I will be honest with you. This kind of prejudice is common in these parts. Those men may have backed down today, but others might try again. You will face discrimination, harassment. People will refuse to do business with you. Then we will grow our own food and trade with people who are not idiots, Kethri said flatly. The magistrate laughed. Fair enough. I admire your spirit. She pulled out a document from her satchel. This is a writ of protection. It officially recognizes the four of you as residents of this property with full legal rights. Anyone who attacks you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. It is not perfect, but it should help. Jonas took the document, scanning it quickly. It was exactly what she said. Thank you. This means everything. Thank the fact that I am not a bigot and I believe in rule of law. The magistrate headed for the door, then paused. For what it is worth, I think what you are doing here is remarkable, building something new, breaking down old hatreds. The world needs more of that. She left with her guards, and the four of them stood in the damaged house, processing what had just happened. We are safe, Eula said, her voice full of wonder. We are actually safe. For now, Dagra said, but she was smiling. She turned to Jonas. You defended us. Fought your own people for us, nearly died for us. I fought for my family, Jonas corrected. I would do it again without hesitation. Dagra pulled him into a crushing hug, and he felt her shaking. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good, Jonas said into her shoulder. Terror means you are alive, means you are feeling something real. They spent the rest of the day cleaning up and repairing the damage. It could have been worse. A few broken windows, some cracked boards, nothing structural. By nightfall, the house looked nearly normal again. That night they sat around the fire together, exhausted but triumphant. Kethri was sharpening arrows. Eula was mending a torn curtain. Dagra had her head on Jonas's shoulder. It felt right, complete. I have been thinking, Jonas said slowly, about the future, about what we are building here. What are you thinking? Dagra asked. That this farm is ours, all of ours. I want to make that official. I want to add your names to the deed, make you legal co-owners. All three women stared at him. Kethri's hands stilled on her arrows. Eula dropped her needle. Dagra sat up, her eyes wide. You want to give us ownership of your land? Dagra asked carefully. It is not my land. It is our land. I want the paperwork to reflect that. Jonas looked at each of them. You worked this place for 2 years before I arrived. You fought to defend it today. You deserve to have it secured in your names as much as mine. That is not a small thing, Kethri said. Land ownership gives us rights, protection, status. Why would you give us that? Because you are my family, Jonas said simply. Because I trust you, because I love you. He looked at Dagra. All of you. Maybe not in the same way I love Dagra, but it is love nonetheless. Family takes care of each other. This is how I take care of you. Eula started crying, quiet tears running down her green cheeks. No one has ever cared about us like this. No one. Well, I do, Jonas said. So yes. I want to add you to the deed. Make this official. Make this permanent. Dagra kissed him, soft and lingering. Yes, thank you. Yes. They went to the magistrate's office the following week, once the snow had melted enough to make travel possible. The magistrate raised her eyebrows when Jonas explained what he wanted but did not protest. She drew up the new deed, adding Dagra, Kethri, and Eula as equal co-owners of the property. They all signed, and it was done. Walking back to the farm, Jonas felt lighter than he had in years. This was real now. Permanent. His family had a home that no one could take away. Spring arrived with an explosion of green growth and new possibilities. They planted the fields with renewed energy, planning for a bigger harvest than the previous year. They expanded the garden. They built a new chicken coop to replace the one the bear had damaged. They worked together like a well-oiled machine, anticipating each other's needs and covering each other's weaknesses. One evening in late spring, Dagra pulled Jonas aside after dinner. She looked nervous, which was unusual for her. "I need to ask you something," she said. "Anything," Jonas replied. "In our culture, when two people decide to commit to each other permanently, there is a ritual, a bonding ceremony. It is similar to what humans call marriage, but more. It is a public declaration that you are choosing this person above all others, that you will face the world as one unit." She took a breath. "I want that with you. I want to bond with you officially, but I do not know if that is something humans do with orcs." Jonas's heart swelled. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I suppose I am," Dagra said, her tusks showing as she smiled nervously. "Is that strange? Should you be the one asking?" "I do not care who asks," Jonas said, pulling her close. "Yes, yes, I will marry you, bond with you, whatever we call it, yes." They kissed under the evening sky, and Jonas felt like he was floating. This impossible, wonderful woman wanted to spend her life with him. He was the luckiest man alive. Planning the ceremony took a month. They wanted to do it right, honoring both human and orc traditions. Kethri and Eula helped enthusiastically, throwing themselves into preparations. They decided to hold it on the farm in the field where they had all worked together. They would invite the magistrate as a witness, but otherwise keep it small and private. The day arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies, warm sun, a gentle breeze. They decorated the field with wildflowers and set up a simple altar made of stacked stones. The magistrate arrived early, smiling warmly at the scene. Jonas wore his best clothes, which were not particularly impressive, but he had washed and mended them carefully. Dagra wore a dress that Eula had made, deep green fabric that complemented her skin and emphasized her powerful frame. She looked beautiful, absolutely stunning. They stood facing each other while Kethri officiated, using a combination of orc and human marriage rites. She spoke about partnership and trust, about building something new from the ashes of old hatreds. She talked about courage and love and choosing your own path. "Do you, Dagra, take Jonas as your bonded partner to face the world together, to build a life together, to choose him above all others?" "I do," Dagra said, her voice strong and clear. "I choose him. I love him. I commit myself to him for as long as we both live." "Do you, Jonas, take Dagra as your bonded partner to face the world together, to build a life together, to choose her above all others?" "I do," Jonas said, unable to keep the smile off his face. "I choose her. I love her. I commit myself to her for as long as we both live. Then, by the authority given to me by family bonds and common sense, I declare you bonded partners, married in the eyes of all who matter. Kiss already before I vomit from how sweet this is." Everyone laughed, and Jonas and Dagra kissed while Eula cheered and the magistrate applauded. It was perfect, exactly what they needed. That night they celebrated with a feast. The magistrate stayed, clearly enjoying herself. They ate and drank and told stories late into the night. Jonas looked around the table at these people who had become his world, and felt a peace settle over him that he had never known. He had come here looking for a place to disappear. Instead, he had found a place to truly live. Summer brought new challenges and new joys. Travelers occasionally passed by the farm, and word spread about the unusual household. Some people were hostile, but others were curious. A few even stopped to trade, willing to look past prejudice for good vegetables and well-made tools. A young orc man arrived in midsummer, looking half-starved and desperate. He had been exiled from his clan for refusing to fight. Dagra and her sisters recognized his story immediately because it mirrored their own. They took him in without question, and Jonas agreed without hesitation. Their family grew to 5. His name was Grath, and he was shy but hardworking. He took to farming like he had been born to it. Within a week, Jonas could not imagine the place without him. Eula clearly could not either, based on the way she blushed whenever Grath spoke to her. "Your farm is becoming a refuge for orc outcasts," Kethri observed one evening. "That is going to attract attention. Some of it will be good, some will not be." "Let it come," Jonas said. "We will handle it together." And they did. When 2 more orcs arrived in late summer, siblings fleeing a forced marriage arrangement, they made room. When a human woman showed up with her half-orc child, running from a village that wanted to kill them both, they took them in and gave them sanctuary. The farm was bursting at the seams, but it was alive with purpose. They expanded the house, adding rooms. They cleared more land. They built additional structures to accommodate everyone. It was hard work, but it was meaningful work. Jonas realized one day that they were not just running a farm anymore. They were building a community, a place where humans and orcs could live together in peace, where people who did not fit in anywhere else could find acceptance. It was terrifying and exhausting and absolutely wonderful. In the autumn, Dagra told him she was pregnant. Jonas felt like his heart stopped and restarted in the span of a breath. They were going to have a child, a half-human, half-orc child. He was going to be a father. "Are you happy?" Dagra asked, watching his face carefully. "I know this is not something we planned." "I am terrified," Jonas admitted. "I am overwhelmed. I have no idea how to be a father, but yes, I am happy, so incredibly happy." They announced it to the household that evening, and everyone celebrated. Eula started planning immediately, talking about baby clothes and nursery arrangements. Kethri began researching midwives who would be willing to help deliver a half-orc baby. Grath offered to build a cradle. The community they had built rallied around them, and Jonas felt that same overwhelming sense of rightness. This was family. This was home. Winter came again, but this time it felt different. The house was full of people and warmth and laughter. They weathered the cold together, sharing stories and skills and companionship. Jonas taught combat techniques to those who wanted to learn self-defense. Dagra taught everyone her methods for preserving food. Kethri organized a rotating watch schedule. Eula and Grath were officially courting, much to everyone's amusement. On a particularly cold night in midwinter, Jonas and Dagra lay in bed together, her swollen belly between them. He put his hand on it and felt the baby kick. "What do you think our child's life will be like?" Dagra asked quietly. "Growing up half-human and half-orc in a world that hates both mixed families and integration." "I think it will be hard," Jonas said honestly. "There will be people who fear them and people who hate them, but they will grow up here, surrounded by family who loves them. They will know both cultures. They will understand that differences do not have to mean division. And maybe, if we are lucky, they will help build a better world than the one we inherited." "That is a lot of pressure for one baby," Dagra said, but she was smiling. "Then we will have more babies," Jonas said, grinning. "Share the responsibility." Dagra laughed and kissed him. "One at a time, husband, one at a time." The baby arrived in early spring with the first thaw. It was a difficult birth that lasted through the night. Jonas held Dagra's hand and felt completely helpless as she labored. Kethri and the midwife they had hired worked efficiently, but every sound of pain that Dagra made cut through Jonas like a knife. Finally, a baby's cry filled the room. The midwife cleaned the infant and handed it to Dagra, who held their child with tears streaming down her face. "A daughter," the midwife said, "healthy and strong." Jonas looked at his daughter and felt his world expand. She was small, barely the size of his forearm, with pale green skin and tiny features. She had her mother's pointed ears and small tusks already visible. She was perfect, absolutely perfect. "What should we name her?" Dagra asked, looking up at Jonas with exhausted joy. They had discussed names for months but never settled on one. Now, looking at his daughter, Jonas knew. "Hope," he said. "We name her Hope because that is what she represents, hope for a better future." "Hope," Dagra repeated, testing the name. "Yes, I like it, Hope Thorn." The household welcomed Hope with overwhelming enthusiasm. Everyone wanted to hold her, to look after her, to be part of her life. She was the first child born into their little community, and she represented everything they were trying to build. Jonas watched his daughter grow through the spring and summer, and he saw the community grow around her. More outcasts arrived, seeking the sanctuary they had heard about. Some were orcs fleeing persecution. Others were humans who had fallen in love with orcs and been cast out by their families. Still others were simply people who believed in building something better. They expanded again, building more structures, clearing more land. What had started as a small farm was becoming a proper settlement. They needed organization, rules, systems to handle disputes and share resources. Jonas found himself in a leadership role he had never wanted, but Dagra was beside him every step, and together they figured it out. By the time Hope took her first steps, there were 20 people living on the property. They had built a meeting hall, a communal kitchen, individual family homes and workshops for various crafts. They grew enough food to feed everyone with surplus to trade. They were thriving. Merchants began to stop by regularly, drawn by the quality of their goods and the novelty of their settlement. Some were wary, but most were willing to trade. Word spread that the mixed settlement was peaceful and productive, that humans and orcs could live together without violence. It was not always easy. There were disputes and disagreements. There were moments of tension when old prejudices surfaced. There were external threats from people who wanted to see them fail. But they weathered every storm together, and they grew stronger for it. On Hope's first birthday, they held a celebration that drew people from 3 neighboring towns. Humans and orcs mingling, eating together, laughing together. Jonas stood with Dagra watching the party and felt tears in his eyes. "We did this," he said quietly. "We built this." "We started it," Dagra corrected. "Everyone here built it together. This is what happens when people choose love over hate, cooperation over conflict." Jonas pulled her close, kissing her temple. "I love you. I love our life. I love what we have created." "I love you too," Dagra said. "Thank you for being brave enough to share your farm with 3 strange orc women who were cooking in your kitchen." Jonas laughed. "Best decision I ever made." They watched Hope toddle around the party, surrounded by people of all species who adored her. They watched Eula and Grath announce their own engagement to widespread cheering. They watched their community, their family, their home thrive. 2 years after buying a farm site unseen, Jonas Thorne stood in the middle of everything he had never known he wanted. A wife he loved beyond reason. A daughter who was his entire world. A community that functioned as an extended family. A purpose that got him out of bed every morning excited for the day ahead. The nightmares from the war had faded. The loneliness that had haunted him for years was gone. In their place was contentment, joy, and the deep satisfaction of building something meaningful. As the sun set on Hope's birthday party, Jonas and Dagra walked back to their house hand in hand. Tomorrow there would be work to do, fields to tend, people to organize, problems to solve. But tonight they would simply be together, enjoying the life they had created. Jonas had come here looking for peace. He had found so much more. He had found purpose. He had found family. He had found love in the most unexpected place. And he had learned that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never planned for. The ones that surprise you when you walk through the door and find 3 giant orc women already cooking in the kitchen. The end was really just the beginning. Their story would continue through Hope and whatever other children they had, through the community they were building, through every person who arrived seeking sanctuary and found a home, through every act of kindness that chipped away at centuries of hatred and fear. But for now, in this moment, Jonas was simply happy. He had everything he needed: a home, a family, love, and the promise of more tomorrows filled with the same warmth and purpose that defined today. He closed the door behind them and pulled Dagra into his arms, and outside the stars came out one by one, bearing witness to all the impossible, wonderful things that can happen when people choose to be brave.